So Russia is introducing new laws to target the spread of fake news. Russian fake news law could give offenders 15 years in prison, a punishment for statements that discredited the military. Folks, there is no First Amendment in Russia. There is no guarantee to free speech in Russia. I need people to understand the difference between the United States and Russia. Again, I've been covering a lot of these Russian protests. People risking their lives to protest against the war and invasion in Ukraine. There is no, like in the United States, there's at least on paper a pretend version of free speech. Cops will not just like shoot you in the head. I mean, they will, but like, you know, they're not supposed to, but they will. In Russia, it's not even that they're not supposed to. I mean, you know, they will, and there's no reason why they wouldn't. Again, Russian oppression, you know, it's an authoritarian regime. It's a tyrannical dictatorship. Let's be real. Let's be honest. We got to call it how it is. And so now what they're doing is the war in Ukraine, not going so well. Putin is going on television, upping the propaganda, trying to come up with more reasons why the invasion is good. And now this new law is going to try to ban anyone speaking truth to power. If you're at a protest demonstration talking about the war in Ukraine, you will get jailed for 15 years. If you are trying to report news as a journalist, just post them anywhere online, you will go into jail for 15 years. This is not good, folks. This is not good. They also blocked Facebook, but I'm going to be reading into that a little bit more. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law punishing fake news with up to 15 years in prison. The rule will impose fines or jail terms for spreading false information about the military, as well as fines for people who publicly call for sanctions against Russia. Courts would mete out the harshest sentences for fake news that leads to serious consequences. According to earlier coverage from the Moscow Times, the bill is meant to penalize people who knowingly distort the purpose, role, and tasks of the Russian armed forces, as well as other units during special military and other operations. Again, with the term special military operation. Okay, sure. Including people who spread unapproved information about Russian war losses. So let's say Russia is saying that, like, you know, 300 soldiers got killed. If you say, you know, there's 312 soldiers that got killed because, let's say, you know, you got a friend in Russia and they said, oh, you know, 12, you know, what, or they got a friend, you know, in the war, whatever. You will, again, it's not approved. You're not allowed to say. Even if you know for a fact you've got photos of the bodies, it's unapproved. You can't say what's actually happening because, again, there is no protection of free speech, and there's no even pretend protection of free speech like we have in America. In America, there is no free speech. There never has been. But at least the Constitution to our country pretends that there should be. At least it's given us something to strive for. Russia, no such thing. Literally by tomorrow, the law will force punishment, and very tough punishment, on those who lied and made statements which discredited our armed forces, said, you know, Vyacheslav Volodin, chairman of Russia's State Duma legislative body. In a statement quoted by Reuters, Putin signed an earlier fake news law in 2019 that includes fines and jail time for disrespecting the Russian government, but the penalty was a far lighter 15 days. Russia has already cracked down on news outlets and social platforms amid its invasion of Ukraine, disputing external death reports that far exceed its own count and objecting to descriptions of the invasion as a war rather than a special military operation. The Tech and Communications Regulatory Agency Roskomnadzor partially blocked Facebook for allegedly restricting the access restricting the accounts of state-owned media, then blocked Twitter soon after. It demanded that Wikipedia remove supposedly false reports of casualties among Russian military troops as well as Ukrainian civilians, including children, although it hasn't appeared to follow through on a threat to block it. Yet is the key word here that is not in the article. Most recently, it blocked access to the BBC and other news sites for undermining the Russian stability and security, leading to the British outlet to broadcast over shortwave radio. Again, folks, Russia is cracking down hard. You know you're losing epic style when you try to ban all media in the country. If the only media allowed in your country at this point is state-owned propaganda, you know you're not, your, quote, special military operation is not going so well. It's not going so well if you got to ban every other outlet for news and then threaten people with 15 years in jail if they don't say what you want them to say. This is a big problem, folks. The BBC subsequently announced that it would be suspending the work of its journalists and supporting staff in response to the law's passage. The legislation appears to criminalize the process of independent journalism, said BBC Director General Tim Davie. In a statement, our BBC News service in Russia will continue to operate from outside Russia. The safety of our staff is paramount, and we are not prepared to expose them to the risk of criminal prosecution simply for doing their jobs. Now, again, we need to have this conversation. The Russian people need to, have the same rights as the Ukrainian people when it comes to, asylum, when it comes to being refugees. There is no reason why the Russian people being oppressed, deserve the same brutal harassment that Vladimir Putin does. Vladimir Putin is treating his population, like animals, locking them in cages, not, taping their mouths shut. They're not allowed to say what is true. They're not allowed to say the sky is blue in Russia. The sky is obviously green in Russia. And if you say otherwise, 15 years in jail. So we need to really have this conversation. Yes, Ukrainian refugees need to be absorbed, as much as possible into Europe, into other places, including the U.S. But also we need to have these same paths for people of Russia. The people of Russia need to escape if they want to, if they decide to do so, because they don't deserve to be living under this oppressive regime. And again, I also would say this applies to all refugees anywhere. Again, not just Ukraine, not just Russia, not just European, but, Mideastern, African, South American refugees anywhere need to be accepted because that's just the right thing to do. But again, we really need to stop. There's a lot going on with, people like banning just random Russian citizens from interacting with things. And that's a huge problem. And we really need to start thinking about, the Russian civilians here that are dealing with significant oppression. And again, Russian civilians are still protesting in major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, even though now they're risking 15 years in jail for saying that there's a war in Ukraine. So if you protest saying no war in Ukraine, you will go to jail for 15 years because you said that there's a war in Ukraine. Again, this is a big problem. And is anyone I'm not here advocating for anything necessarily. I'm just saying, is anyone going to do anything about this? We need to have open channels for asylum. We need to, again, let people in Russia know that if they want to leave, there are channels to do so. And that's at the bare minimum because, again, this is a big problem. So, but not good.